Welcome everybody to a Delco Nerd Network hot take. Guys, if you haven't seen a hot take before, well, it's where a few friends get in a basement. We give our thoughts, we give our opinions on a TV show, a movie, or a game. Today, it's going to be a game, and that game is Final Fantasy 16. Here to discuss, as always, the triple threat, Chris Trio.
Gooch, how do you do?
I am doing well. I'm very excited to be talking about one of our games of the year. And in the middle, our guest, the illustrious Jess Scharnagle of Fanbyte. Welcome. Glad to have you in person.
Absolutely.
I know. I'm really excited to be
First
here
time
in
at the
person.
table.
I got to see the table. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. What's good is, well, maybe not good, but like you never saw the old setup, so like now we're just at the
always
peak.
look
It just looks
Yeah,
amazing.
we've peaked here.
We
on
can
this.
only
Never
go
didn't
up from
have
here.
it.
Yeah,
Never
yeah.
didn't
For
have
sure.
it. Yeah.
But before we start, do you want us to tell us a little bit about yourself? You are in the games industry, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've been in the games industry for I've been playing video games since I was like 6.
I love it.
And I have been working in games I'm going into my 6th year. So it's been a while. I started in
amazing.
esports, and then I went into general gaming, and then I hated all of that. So I focused on one game, and so now I work at Fanbyte as the Final Fantasy 14 coordinator. So anything you see that comes out of Fanbyte, that's me.
Awesome.
I edit everything that comes out of there. So I have touched everything that comes out of that website.
Anything you read. That's awesome.
Anything you read Final Fantasy side,
That's cool to
me.
hear.
And so obviously you have a lot of experience with 14, it goes without saying, but I don't know of your like other Final Fantasy knowledge. Have you played a lot of other Final Fantasy stuff?
No.
Interesting. So that's actually really funny. So like the Tears of the Kingdom review, Trio has played a little bit of the game, but not
I played
all
the
of it.
demo,
But,
yeah.
you know, as a DNN host, he's going to be on and,
I'll
shoot
interject
shit.
with some questions here and there.
So, like, you have no Final Fantasy experience. You have
Zero.
the MMO experience, and I have everything else that
Yeah.
not the MMO. So that's like, we have like every sort of like bracket you can be in, because I feel like with Final Fantasy, especially like with the MMO, I feel like I don't know a lot of people who are real hardcore in the MMO and hardcore on every other game. I don't personally know.
I
them.
know quite a few.
Yeah, I was like, there probably are.
Yeah.
But I don't know anyone who's like, oh yeah, I've dabbled in the MMO. But
Yeah.
like, yeah.
There's a lot of people that have experience with everything Final Fantasy except for the MMOs too.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's me. I mean,
have
like,
you
know.
not played 14 at all?
No. And
So
we
is
Have you not heard of the critically acclaimed MMO Final Fantasy 14?
haven't heard of it by
There's even
Square
a
Enix.
new expansion in the free trial.
So here's my thing.
God damn it, Gooch.
It's just as I'm like I feel like I'm a mono MMOer. Like I'm like Guild Wars 2 is like, even though I'm not playing it right now, an expansion just came out and I'm not playing it.
Me neither.
It's like that's my MMO, and I feel like I have to like abandon ship.
You
and-
have no idea.
and move over entirely.
You have no idea how much better Final Fantasy 14 is.
You know
than
what's
Guild
funny?
Wars
Because
2.
it doesn't like, from what I've seen of it, I've seen plenty of it. It doesn't like appeal gameplay wise, but obviously I haven't played it, so
It didn't appeal to me game wise either until I played it.
I'm like, it's because I haven't played it. Like it's I'm clearly
100%.
it's something.
It's the only MMO like in the series, right? Like that.
No.
11,
there has been.
11.
Okay,
and
okay.
it's still around.
It is
like people still play it.
Yeah.
Even though
Okay.
it's like
kind of dead.
17, 16
Oh,
years
wow.
old.
Okay.
Actually, you know what's funny? Today, like this day,
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, is when Final Fantasy 14 relaunched into A Realm Reborn.
Really?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. So did you
Today.
know this? FF14
No, I didn't know that.
failed. The original
Oh.
FF14 failed.
Vaguely
Spectacular.
familiar.
And they relaunched the game, which has never really been done ever.
And it worked out.
Yoshi P picked it
Obviously,
up.
as we can see.
Yeah.
Yoshi P picked it up
What
in
is
his
what
little
is Yoshi
hands.
P's full name?
Naoki Yoshida.
Okay, because I'm like I know it's like the Yoshida part makes sense, but I'm like
Naoki Yoshida. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've met
And
him
he-
exactly once.
yeah, and
And I
he
dabbled.
actually worked on 15 as well, but he
Okay.
started in 14. So
I see.
Square, I mean, like transitioning into talking about Final Fantasy 16, Square really got their all-star team for this game because I don't think Final Fantasy has been in a good place in a while. I almost can't count 14. It's such a different sphere from the mainline series.
Sure.
But 15 wasn't well received, and I personally don't think it's a great game. It's the
That's pretty split, right? Because I feel
the
like
macho guy road trip simulator, like, you know, that's what people call it, but like it kind of is that.
It is,
like,
though.
Yeah, I'm like, it's not
people
wrong.
seem to. No, it's weird because like I feel like I get like whenever I talk to people about this, it's either they hate it or they love it. At least when I talk to people who
I lost
enjoy it.
interest really fast. I played the beginning
that makes
of
sense. I just remember, seeing all the
because I went to
boys
go
in the
drive
car.
somewhere, and they was like, "You shouldn't go here," and I'm like, "Well, then why did you let me drive 5 minutes down the road?" Like,
yeah, it's got a lot of problems. And I think 13. I love 13. A lot of people don't like 13. I think 12 is a more positive bag, but has some mixed things. And then 10 is like very critically acclaimed. But 10 came out in 2004. So we're talking like we haven't really gone that far in 10 years with Final Fantasy. We haven't. So we're at 16, right? And I feel like Square really had to get this right. And I think it's one of the best Final Fantasies ever. From somebody who's played a majority of them, like jumping into this game, you really felt the energy and the different.
Drama.
Yeah, the drama, especially
the grandeur.
I mean, you played the intro.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it is
The
wild
demo.
for sure. Yeah, no, you definitely get that
you
scale.
jump into that and you're like, holy
You're like, what
shit.
the fuck's
What is
going
this?
on? No, it definitely it does feel
the
epic.
first sentence out of a character's mouth in Final Fantasy 16 is "you cock." They don't curse in
we
Final
know
Fantasy.
where we're starting off.
They curse
say-
a lot.
They say
16.
damn and like hell and maybe bastard, your typical like shit, but in 16 it's like we're just gonna be
Full
like
send.
pretty modern day language for Game of Thrones is gonna come up a ton in this conversation, but in a Game of Thrones-esque kind of world. But Jess, what did you think about Final Fantasy 16?
I think that Final Fantasy 16 is the expansion Shadowbringers if it were made today. There were a lot of comparisons I made to 14 and 16 as somebody who has played that game religiously. I loved it. I loved every second of it. People complained about the cutscenes. I love the cutscenes. They're my favorite part.
Yeah.
I couldn't care less about that. Like, if they had just made that into a movie, I would have sat there and watched it for 30 hours. Like, it was just that good, the story. And it kept evolving, and I kind of, like, saw it as it went on, because I'm like, I know this formula, Yoshi P, and there was one part that pissed me off, but other than that, the rest of the entire game
I got some negatives. I don't want to say it's all positive.
I do too.
Like it's definitely
It rarely ever is.
It's a game of the year contender.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be interesting to see where we're in the conversation about it and the other games coming out this year. Starfield, Baldur's Gate. I don't know if Armored Core 6 is going to be a game of the year, but like it could be. But I don't think
Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anything else generally?
I cried a lot at the end.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Cried a lot.
I really liked the relationship in this game between Jill and Clive. Final Fantasy, as a typical Japanese game that has anime influences, I feel like dances around relationships a lot.
Yeah.
But this one, they fully go into a
Finally,
relationship.
I saw that cutscene where they kissed, and I was like, finally!
Yeah, because it's like when it So this is the first Final Fantasy game where we have like adults. Like, hair on the chest.
Really? Okay.
Adults.
What, you're always playing as children?
Mostly
Teenagers.
teenagers,
Okay, teenagers.
Younger than 19.
Right.
Mostly, yes.
Okay.
So it is.
I guess Cloud, right? Yeah, that's Final Fantasy. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
Yes, that's
7.
fine. Yeah, 7.
Seven.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
he's like
a teenager,
18
yeah.
or 19. Yeah, like, and not even like young 20s. Like you have a
Sure.
few characters like Orin in 10 is like 35.
Sure.
But the rest of them are like kids.
They're babies.
Little
Yeah.
teenies.
So it's cool. It's cool. Like the narrative is mature. The characters are mature. There's like one young character in 16. But I just was like, finally, I feel like Final Fantasy kind of grew up with me finally.
Makes sense.
And we can tell more adult stories, and we can have like adult relationships. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing like Game of Thrones level. There are a few.
There are a couple.
There's
Game of
no
Thrones.
incestuous relationships? Anyways, let's continue.
I
no.
don't think so.
But it gets weird.
All right, well, then this
There
isn't Game of Thrones enough for me.
there is a Robin Aaron allegory.
Yes.
What, like the mom and the kid?
Yup.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
But-
that was weird.
Yeah, and there
And there
Nice.
was the prince and like the squire situation, which
Clive
was.
is a lot like Jon Snow.
But no, I'm talking about. Oh God, why can't I think of his name now? Bahamut's familiar.
Dion.
Dion and his squire.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, they put something.
Because
yeah.
they're together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
I
it
was
like, is it like the one Baratheon almost in
Yes.
Game of Thrones? Yeah.
Yeah,
the one
yeah. I
brother.
was like,
right,
ooh.
yeah.
Yeah, and they're gay, obviously.
Yeah, that's it.
yeah. But Trio, you played the demo
I did.
Of this.
It was a while ago.
And you didn't like it.
I shouldn't say that. Like, it's not that I didn't like it. I wasn't walking away like, this game's bad, because it's obviously not. It just didn't, like, I don't know. At the moment, it didn't catch me. I would like to go back and, like, give it maybe another go through and see if I'm in a better mind. Because, I don't know. Certain games, for some reason, I try once and I'm like, eh. And then I go back, like, a month or two later. I'm like, oh, why wasn't I seeing this? So it was really cool. The combat's different, not too different. I like how they kind of add in some, flares of what it used to be, because it's a lot more turn-based, right? It used to be.
Yeah, Final Fantasy is
combat.
traditionally turn-based.
Yeah.
And since 12, we've been sort of moving away from that.
Sure.
And I really don't think we're gonna go back to turn-based for the
Makes
I don't
sense.
think you can.
Yeah, that's also a good point. I
think you
don't
can.
really think you can go back at this point.
But yeah, no, overall, I mean, it's an amazing looking game. It's a very interesting world. The lore thing in the middle of the cutscenes was pretty interesting.
Oh,
what
we
was
gotta
it called?
talk
Like the lore
about that.
guide or something?
Active time lore.
Yeah, which was really
ATL.
interesting.
You
I
get a
know
lot
there
of
was-
info that way too.
Absolutely. There was one. Could you like skip unnecessary dialogue? Am I misremembering that or something like that? Does it come up- or, like
You can skip
or is
through
it, like-
things.
yeah. Okay. Either way, I thought there was
You
like literally,
shouldn't.
but that's what I was thinking. I don't know why. But no. Overall, I thought it was really cool. It just didn't catch me at that moment. So I definitely want to go back and.
So
and give
can
it
I
more of a
can I
thought.
tell you a secret?
Yeah.
I bought a new TV for this game.
Oh.
I think this is a game you get a new TV
I
for.
shit
Makes
you not.
sense.
My TV was 5 years old, so not that old. We moved it somewhere else, but I went to New York. I was invited to go to New York to preview the game before it came out in early May, and it was very interesting because I had never done this before, and they had this giant like 70-inch TV. And it was gorgeous, and it was like 4K, and I'm like, oh my god, this looks so good on this screen. And then like a month later, they were like, here's the TVs that we're partnering with, and I was like, reached out to my PR person and said, is that the TV we played on? And she goes, yeah. And I said, okay. And I went out and I bought a smaller version of it.
Sure.
But
Was it an LG?
it was Sony.
Really?
It was a Sony TV,
Okay.
and you know
Makes
what?
sense,
It was
yeah.
the best decision I ever made because it looked so good on that
Yeah,
screen.
that's
Oh
awesome.
my god!
Did you finish the demo?
I don't think so. No.
So you
I
didn't,
think-
Oh,
you didn't
so that's
experience
why.
Efreet versus Phoenix. Because,
yeah.
That's why he didn't like it.
the set pieces of this game are the icon fights
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
between, mostly Efreet and Bahamut and Titan and Garuda and Odin. And dude, they must have spent
They did seem wild. I
months
did see 'em on
these
YouTube
fights.
a little bit,
They
yeah.
are worth looking up, like, just for
sure.
the cinematic value of
Yeah.
what's going on. But I was like, me with volume fully up. I'm blowing this house
just a
out
tornado.
of the fucking
Yeah,
water.
Jesus Christ.
And yeah, like every fight just felt like this. Like you can clearly see where some time was spent on
Yeah.
this
Sure.
game
Oh, yeah.
with these fights. I'm like, they clearly intricately went in and were like, we're gonna do. Like it,
was
just
insane.
It,
Like,
it doesn't feel the same, right? It's not
That's
like it's
awesome.
not like big fight
'Cause
with
that's
big
hard to do.
person, right?
Yeah.
And they all feel different.
Well, I was like, I'm going through it. I'm like, I don't really like the fights. Like, I'm not a huge RPG gamer.
Sure.
I'm
Let
mostly
me
stick to,
stop
like,
you right there. This game ain't an RPG.
No, we'll get to that. But like anyway, with like combat and shit like that, I don't usually do like the whole smash X and like have a skill or whatever. I'm
Right.
more like the MMO player, the casual player.
Sure.
So for me, I was like, I'm not really too interested in these fights.
Devil May Cry ain't your game.
No.
Because that's where the combat director's from.
Makes
So
sense.
that's where
Yeah,
all the
no, Devil May Cry
influence
is not, no. So when I got to the fights, I was like, oh, this is going to be, something I just have to get through. But every time I came to one of those icon fights, I was like, oh, man.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I could see also the Final Fantasy XIV in it because of the way that they did some of the mechanics. At the very end with the very last fight, they use a skill, what's the last one? Ultimus or something? I don't remember what it's called.
Ultima, right.
So,
But I don't know
whatever his lance
whatever
form is.
yeah.
He used a skill called Holy, which is what I use as my main, and I was like, you are not using my own skill against me. But yeah, the
God
fights,
damn it.
Titan was my favorite.
Yeah.
And I think it was because of the music.
Do you know how many like of these battles were there total?
Ifrit, Phoenix, Garuda. I mean, that's not.
Sure.
It's an icon fight, but it's a little different for story reasons. Titan, Bahamut,
Odin.
what?
Odin.
And I guess Ultima kind of counts as his own, even though he's not an
I
icon.
didn't think it was that grand.
Okay. It's grand.
It was
But,
okay.
All right.
It didn't really.
It
hit.
wasn't
the
as
one
good as
against
Titan.
Odin is pretty wild. I thought, I think just from like the length of it, and I feel like at this point the importance of it, like at the end of the game, like everything's kind of culminating, and there's one character who's eluded you this whole game, and it's the leader of Elude, who is Barnabas Throm, and he's not really just like Game of Thrones. They introduce a character who you see once, and then you'll see him again in like a season or two.
Yep,
and he's that character. He's like, okay, here I am. Here's who I am. Hey, and then I'm gone.
Yeah.
And then he comes back at the end, and you kind of see what goes on with him and the big bad Ultima, who's not really revealed, and probably until like a third into the game, where you go, okay, great, kingdom versus kingdom, country versus country, cool, but where's the let's kill God portion of Final Fantasy? Just
it's
like
there.
every Final Fantasy ends with you killing God. It's like, when are we gonna get to that? And that wasn't in the marketing for this game at all. It usually isn't, but the focus was on this Game of Thrones-esque narrative. And it really does feel like that. That's one thing, I can't wait to replay this game on the Final Fantasy difficulty. One, because now that I know the story, I can understand it from another level. Just like if you were to watch Game of Thrones again, you understand this hell of a lot better than you did starting.
100%.
And then from a gameplay perspective, getting to control the icon power. So once you defeat an icon or a dominant, you get to absorb part of their powers.
Got it.
And now I have Garuda's abilities and Odin's, and you start with Phoenix because you're a shield of Phoenix, and Joshua Rosfield is your brother, so that's why you have that.
I see.
But how did you feel about all the different, and Shiva, of course, and
my favorite.
how did you feel about the combat like that? Because it took me a little bit of getting used to and understanding how I'm supposed to play.
As someone who doesn't typically like combat, I loved it. It was easy to understand. It was customizable.
Yeah.
I found myself switching things out for certain fights because I played it on journalist mode. Okay, I don't like video games that have a lot of combat. I'm literally a journalist. It was made for me. Okay,
it's a pretty easy game.
But
I gotta admit,
I found myself still failing sometimes, especially that weird behemoth fight. That all of a sudden I was like, why am I having so much trouble with this? And it was because I had skills that you had to charge up, and I'm like, okay, I can't do this. I have to be able to just hit it and move.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, well, I have to tailor this fight. Yeah, I have to tailor it to this fight. And it made me think a little bit, and I liked it because it was only one side of the controller really that you had to worry about.
Okay.
So it was I didn't have to think too hard, but it still required some forethought.
Sure.
Which was nice.
That makes sense.
So for somebody who is not good at video games, it was honestly pretty awesome. I actually really liked the combat. It was one of my favorite parts about the game.
That's cool to hear.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So and I found it really interesting because each icon you can channel into is a certain play style or has abilities that aesthetically to that icon or whatever. So but once you master the ability, you can put it. So with each icon comes an icon ability. And so Phoenix is sort of like a blink. You go from one place to another and you're there. Garuda's
you can yank somebody.
You can yank a smaller enemy,
yes.
or the bigger enemy launches you up to do aerial stuff.
You could also pull an enemy down, a bigger one,
okay.
and it stuns it for a little bit.
Yeah. So I can
cool.
take if I master my abilities from Bahamut, I can use them with the Garuda stuff. So now
Which I didn't learn until the very last
you're
fight.
really mixing and matching stuff.
Interesting.
Okay. So that's where the New Game Plus comes in, where, I have all my abilities more or less. There's probably a few you didn't slot into. You can respec anytime.
Makes sense. I like it.
But now I can really mix and match stuff and sort of master loadouts, essentially. And I do want to return to the RPG part of it because, Final Fantasy traditionally, it's a JRPG. That's what the series is. But this game is not an RPG at all. It's an action game.
100%.
And
I keep hearing that.
If Jeff Keighley wants to put this in the RPG category, he's making a big fucking mistake. And that's not a negative. I'm just stating a fact.
I want to see. I have the email still from PR. I want to see if they actually say
it's an action game or an RPG. Yeah, and it's just that's fine. I do have some issue with that, just because it's like Final Fantasy traditionally is an RPG system. Besides the ability stuff we just talked about, there is some lackluster equipment that is really just like, I think you could probably start with the base equipment and not need to even upgrade. I don't know. You feel about that, Jess?
I did go upgrade it each time, but each time I was like, I don't feel like
what's
I
this
need
really
it.
doing?
Yeah. It's just like a stat upgrade.
Yeah, the numbers are higher, great, but I don't
That's
really.
it. There was no way to customize like what you do with it, like whether it's
like you have a blacksmith and you can go reinforce armor,
Right,
but it's
right.
nothing. It's nothing even like Skyrim. You know, like
Sure.
I'll use a very base example.
That makes sense.
It's nothing that deep.
Yeah.
And it just and that's why it's not an RPG. But it would have been cool for them to
lean into that a bit more.
That
That is definitely like a critique I keep hearing throughout of like they just didn't make it as RPG as these games are.
Exactly.
And that's a little bit disappointing.
It's categorized as an action RPG.
Again,
what they
almost
have.
every action game has RPG elements.
We talk
within
about
it
this
these
a ton.
days.
So
Yeah,
Assassin's
so-
Creed is an RPG.
So
Yeah.
here's what it says. It says, this is from the press guide, so this is where I'm getting it from. Please join us as you take control of Clive Rosefield in the first true action RPG in the Final Fantasy series, combining real-time action and RPG features.
All right.
That's fair. That's a reasonable.
That's
yeah.
fair.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
reasonable.
Yeah, that's fair.
That passes.
Yeah, it's just a weird conversation because it's like, I think a lot of people like, and I don't know in your circles and the people you're talking to, how they talk about the progression of Final Fantasy as a series. It's always been an ever-changing series from game to game to game to game to game. It's always
Of course,
changing.
very flux, yeah.
Something, maybe a lot, maybe a little, but it's always been changing. So the fact that we have moved away from turn-based is not really weird. But the RPG move away from, I think, is
It's definitely
weird.
more. Yeah.
But they were clearly trying to capture, I don't even want to say a new audience, but a wider audience. I guess it's the fucking same thing.
I'll say this. There were a lot of cutscenes. I don't know if you noticed this from the demo.
I've heard that. Yes, and also
But-
from the demo, I did notice that.
Yeah.
My husband, who is a huge Final Fantasy fan, has played most of them, was immediately turned off by that.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I can
see,
see
yeah.
I can see why people don't
No,
like it
that's
for that
true.
reason.
Yeah, that's
However,
absolutely. Yeah.
it's worth it. It's so
Yeah.
worth it. It's
No,
worth it to stick
I
through.
totally
'em.
hear you. It's something I do want to give another chance, another shot.
Especially if it's going to like win awards, I
Yeah.
feel like it'll be even more inclined to
Yeah.
like go back.
Absolutely.
Because I think it is going to win a few awards.
It better win a few awards.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how this game of the year is going to shape up because there are a lot of contenders, like, and good ones.
Sure. So another critique I keep hearing are the side quests.
I didn't get to do a whole lot of them, but God, are they not really much of anything?
That's
are they?
what I keep hearing.
Yeah, they're not.
They're just fetch quests,
yeah, and
mostly. Which I'm not surprised at all.
Maybe this is critiquing 14 a little bit, but I feel the MMO influence in the side quests.
Okay.
Because of how mundane they are. And I like the mundane. We talked about this in Discord a lot. Dilly was talking about this. He's like, "Oh yeah, like I don't like how mundane the quests are." And I'm like, in the beginning, I like mundane side quests. It just feels kind of
Normal. You're starting up. Yeah.
calming, and like, yeah, just go get the chicken eggs from the coop. Like
I
something
see
stupid.
both sides of it because a lot of people that have heard that critique are countering it with, well, but it teaches you more about the world, right? So
Sure.
like it gives you a more rich understanding of the environment that you're in,
Sure.
and the world that you're in. And I'm like, yeah, but like,
There's a fine line for that.
Witcher does
Yeah.
that too, and it is some of the best side quests in gaming.
yeah,
I
I,
would
mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I from what I know of Final Fantasy 14, the best side quest writers become the expansion writers,
yeah.
which is great.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, I don't understand a lot of them.
Yeah, I keep hearing that. I keep hearing it's like go to like you said,
Like
fetch quests. Go.
take wood across this bridge.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Go get some dirt and bring it back.
I heard that,
literally.
yeah.
I mean, like,
I mean,
literally.
granted, like that's what most of the beginning of Final Fantasy 14 is.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
Go
I'm
get
like,
this wine and bring it back, and then take it over here. Oh
then come
God,
back.
some of the questions
Jesus.
And some of the UI comes over too, right? With like the quest marker. Am I wrong?
I didn't notice any similarities between quest markers. The only
Okay.
thing I noticed similarity wise, and this is why I was so good at doing my limit break, is because the sound was very similar. I played Dancer in Final Fantasy 14, which has these feathers that you can spend,
Right.
and when you get a feather,
So it's like a mana.
it
Got
makes
it.
a noise. Actually, I think it's the shield. it's one of my skills that does a big damage. And it was
Love
that noise. And every time I hear that noise as a dancer, I press that button. So every time I heard the noise, I was like, limit break.
Yeah.
So that's the only similarity I saw. There was like a plus sign over some of them, which I think said, I don't know what that indicated.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about.
And so the difference between that in Final Fantasy XIV is that there are blue quests and regular quests. They both have the exclamation point, but the blue quests have the plus sign next to them.
Right.
Which meant that you unlock something.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I was looking for when I was looking for side quests. I'm like, okay, what's that plus sign? It must mean it unlocks
right,
something.
because there are side quests where like you get the best sword in the game from a side quest.
Yeah.
And okay, so the way they introduce the side quests are pretty fine. It's usually like in between like big quests,
right.
and you can kind of do them before you do the next big thing, and then you get a little bit more, and then you do them, and then you do the main thing. And I like this what's the word I'm looking for?
The cycle, the loop.
Yes, the gameplay cycle,
Yeah,
the gameplay
yeah,
loop. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was liking that, and then you get to the end, and it just is like here,
Yeah.
some more side quests.
Yeah.
Take all the side
Take
quests.
them all.
So is the world a traditional open world, or is it like kind of sections
It is
sections that you
linearly open world.
got it?
But it's not really open world.
Here's-
Like can you go back to old areas
Yes.
after
Yeah.
you're done and stuff? Okay.
And you can fast travel whenever you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, most of the time.
Yeah, most of
I
the
had
time.
a big gripe with the exploration in this game. I had a big gripe
It's
with
pretty,
it from the very beginning.
Interesting. Why would you say?
So when they first showed me the game when I went to New York, they were like, "We're gonna give you this place to explore," and I was like, "Cool,
Fantastic.
I was like, "I'm gonna see all the things," and then I got there and I was like, "There's a shack, and there's a lake."
Tree.
Yeah, like
and a
there's
lake.
really not much there, and I'm like,
Oh, man.
oh man, I bet they hid some Final Fantasy 14 eggs in here somewhere. You know, like I don't know, like a freaking
Anything, yeah.
literally anything, like a shoe bill.
Really?
I'm like,
okay.
anything. And I was looking around, I'm like, okay. And then I would like pick up the things that you find in the world, and I'm like,
Okay.
okay, some magicked ash.
Not
Great.
no
Some
chests.
magic, yeah.
This
There
Final
were
Fantasy is like
some.
very chest based on picking up items.
Yeah,
in the
and
world.
there's just none.
There's none.
There's the little
There's
chest
like
that you
it's
kick
like
or whatever.
it's not like the the
and
gold
then, like,
red
there's
chest.
sometimes where sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
There's like it's a point of time where I was like, well, I'm gonna explore a little bit,
Yeah.
and I went all the way. I was like, I see a shiny thing over there. I'm
gonna check
gonna
it
go
out.
get
Yeah.
it.
And
And
it's-
then I
and
went
it's-
over there. It was 12 gil. I was like, you gotta be shitting me.
It's like gil or like crafting materials you don't really
Yeah.
care about. Like
Yeah.
the items you pick up in this game are feel like just very flavorless and like
Useless.
either crafting materials that you have an overabundance of.
So there's no real there's not a major reason to explore then?
No.
Is that what? Okay.
Not really.
Interesting.
And I put that. So I reviewed.
You will naturally if you do side quests.
Sure,
You
yeah.
will,
sure.
And the hunts, which I do
But like you're not like it's not like there's not I don't know how else to put it, like Ubisoft style, like you find a question
No.
mark here and there's
Thank
like a
God.
thing here.
No.
See, I think
No.
those things I mean like Ghost of Tsushima does that very well. Whereas like if you just over pepper the map, you need some reason to explore the map. So that does kind of make me a little sad.
and the side quests give you a reason to explore the map and the hunts.
Sure.
And I really like the way they do the hunts. So it's a traditional like bounty board,
Okay.
except for
I
monsters.
didn't do hunts, but we have them in 14, so I imagine they're very similar.
Yeah, I mean, like what the hell else are they supposed
Yeah.
to be? You know, sometimes you
you
go to a
you
person.
get it, and you get a reward.
Right, but
Yeah.
what I like is it doesn't. You have to read the description to know where the monster is. It doesn't just put the icon on your map. So it's like, okay, it's in I don't know, fucking Blue Lake in Blue Town, and but like it won't tell you exactly where the thing is. You just have to go find it, and sometimes you'll run into bounties that you didn't actually get the bounty for yet, but you can still kill it. So
And
the
then you'll
reverse
have
order.
yeah, gotcha.
Right. So I did it, but I didn't even know it was a bounty, and I just ran into it,
Right.
which is
Makes
cool because
Yeah.
it doesn't.
that
it
sounds
doesn't
like a
promote the
traditional
fact.
kind of like quest idea of like, you can find that thing before you start the quest. That's cool.
Right.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and I like the way they did the hunts. But again, the side quests at the end, and there are some important ones. Like I would say, go back and like there are some between, what's his name?
Was Ambrosia a side quest?
Yeah, Ambrosia's a side quest
I
to
feel
get
like
your
Ambrosia
chocobo.
shouldn't have been a side quest.
Yeah, there are some side quests that almost feel like they're too important to be side quests.
Yeah.
Like your mount in the beginning of the game. Did you see the chocobo get decked by a rock?
Yes.
That chocobo comes back. He did not die.
I lost it.
Yeah.
I was like, is that Ambrosia?
That was like one of the moments where like, especially in like shows where like animals get killed really brutally, like,
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah,
god,
you're like, Jesus Christ.
yeah, like holy shit, the chocobo just got hit with a rock again.
Oh
This is
my
Final
God.
Fantasy, man. There's usually not that kind of violence.
Oh, really?
in these
Okay,
games.
so that was
yeah.
my next
So like
question.
again, like the level of violence, the cursing, the blood, like there really just
And
hasn't
they
been
draw
like that.
the Game of Thrones comparison themselves, right? The developers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like
And
they
it's
seem to be
apt.
clearly
It's apt. Like,
that makes sense.
And the other comparison I would give it to, I'm not sure if you're a big anime person, but Attack on Titan.
Really?
And it's the way the
guess
story kind of unfolds. And the grandioseness of it, and then
Sure.
it's like, you really think this is about this? JK, it's gonna get deep.
LOL.
Yeah.
Oh god.
And-
Yeah,
yeah.
no, but that's what Yoshi P does really well too. It's like, the one thing I noticed in the overarching story was that Yoshi P does this awesome thing where like there's a storyline and then it forks 3 different ways.
I see.
Right? But my biggest gripe with
Yeah.
the story is this one point, I think it was almost between Act 2 and Act 3, where it was like you have this awesome like ending and this whole thing happens and that bitch dies. And then all of a sudden you're like,
Benedicta.
yeah, no.
Oh, not
the mom.
Benedicta. Annabelle.
I was
Okay.
like, oh
She
man,
sucks.
this is
Yeah,
great.
she's a
Like,
bitch.
what's gonna happen? And then they immediately slow everything down by like, there's these 3 towns that you need to go help. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
You literally
Here's the side quest.
Yeah.
just got me to this
Yeah,
level.
you're right. And then it's like,
and then
actually,
you
no.
brought me all the way back down. I was like,
Oh,
Yoshi P, you
that's
son of a bitch, because he did it
sad.
in Heaven's Word and it pissed me off because
Has
like
he-
your friends are all gone and it's like, where did my friends go? Oh, but here's this thing over here for people that you
Right.
don't know, but you have to help.
You
It's
have to
like,
help them, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, he
You're the
did it
hero,
again.
Clive.
He did it again. And I'm
That
like,
everyone needs.
Yeah.
So that was-
and Clive really does become the hero that everyone needs, like
Yeah.
stereotypically. And go ahead. I want to get in something else, but if you want.
yeah, I don't know if you felt that, like the whole like, oh man,
Yeah.
I'm on such a high, and then it was like you were
then it just
immediately
kinda
I'm
puts
brought
a
back
fucking
down.
cool with
backstop
coming
right
down
on you.
low off stuff because like there are like huge story moments where either characters die. There's more deaths in the beginning of the story than there are at the end. Like very Game of Thrones, taking people out left and right.
Makes sense.
One of the main characters, Benedicta, who is the dominant of Garuda, who's kind of the hot lady of the game, gets killed very early, and it was almost like you start like learning about who Benedicta is, and she's kind of like she's part of the Waludian Empire, and she is kind of a bitch, and she's working another political angle. She's sleeping with another dominant, so from another country. So she's getting in the weeds there, but she doesn't love him.
Interlinks,
She's doing
yeah.
it for the politics.
Sure.
And she has a relationship with Sid, who, if you're a Final Fantasy fan, Sid is in like pretty much every game. But the way they do Sid in this game, Sid dies early on. Spoilers. Sid dies like really early.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow. Sids have died in the past, but I don't think we've gotten a Sid this integral to the story in a long time.
so
And
what are SIDS? They are
it's
like
just
it's
a name that gets reused.
It's just a name. Yeah.
Just
literally,
Sid,
okay.
yeah. CID, so not like SID, like
There's
Sid.
SIDS in multiple games, though, is what you're
Yeah.
saying? Okay.
Oh, they're in all of them.
Two.
Oh.
Since 2.
I see.
And
Yeah, it's just a
yeah.
character in like
But they're different characters.
correct.
Yeah, okay,
but they're
I'm sorry, I just
always
wanted to
named
make
Sid or Sidolphus, and like
I see.
it's just they just reuse the name.
I see.
Like just like Chocobos are in every final,
Right.
most Final Fantasies, and Cactars and like different monsters and stuff. They just reuse
Right.
their world things a ton.
And just to clarify, I know this, but all these games aren't connected at all, right? They're all it's
Aren't. Most of them are not.
anthological, an anthology series.
I
almost,
guess
so-
I guess it
It's
is.
almost like Marvel, but everything's disconnected.
right.
So like hashtag everything's
opposite
connected.
of a
Yeah.
connected
Just
universe.
kidding.
It's
Yeah.
just-
Like it's all in the same overarching universe, but like imagine them as planets that don't know that each other exist.
Okay,
It's like
that
a-
makes sense.
That's a really good way to put
Yeah,
it. It's
yeah.
like a Final Fantasy like multiverse because they do. There is a lot of games that they overlap everything.
Yeah.
The stories like the Dissidia games are Final Fantasy fighting games where the entire cast
Right,
of Final
right.
Fantasy is like, what are we doing here? Let's fight.
What's going on?
And like the music game that I've been playing, Final Fantasy Theater Rhythm, Final Bar Line. It's like a music game because like Final Fantasy music is fucking
Oh,
fantastic, and
we
we
need to
definitely got to
talk
talk
about
about
the
it.
music, by
I
the
want to go
way.
back to Sid
Yeah.
really quick because so once he dies, Clive sort of adopts Sid's name and persona. He becomes Sid the Outlaw, and he's like the rebel leader essentially.
Right.
So like people know like the name Sid persists, but Sid is actually dead. So he kind of like there are some big time jumps in this game. Clive's a kid, so that's another thing we never really seen in Final Fantasy is this jump in between like not just 1 year, like 5 and 12.
Yeah.
So like we start off the game, Clive's a kid, it jumps 12 years, he's a young adult, and then 5 years.
Okay.
So we're seeing, and like we're seeing like different chunks of his life, and after Sid dies, it's the 5-year jump, and in that 5 years, Clive has become the leader of, I guess it's the resistance. I don't know. They really don't even have a name.
Sure.
No.
But yeah, and there is a big. I don't know how deep we want to get into this. I think you're gonna know where I'm going with. There's a lot of slavery in this story, yeah, it's a big overarching thing in this universe.
At least at the beginning.
Slaves are people who exhibit magic, and that's bad. And they enslave them to essentially do like mundane things and also become warriors, like Clive. And they are marked. They're called bearers, and they're marked with like a tattoo. And if you try to remove the tattoo, you can die. So they're really the Rosarian Empire. Clive's dad is sort of like the progressive one. He's trying to undo slavery and like slowly kind of work back this stigma that has been.
Hey guys, maybe we shouldn't enslave some people here, right?
Right.
Like, I don't know.
And
this is not
like,
great.
I'm trying to remember the exact conversation about this, on the internet and this thing. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, there was some discourse around it.
Yeah. About like the racial, the real life analog between this and.
The racial conversation is different from the slavery conversation, but yeah, there were two big.
Yes, you're right. It actually
yeah.
is.
So one of my good friends, Ash, she was kind of the person that did a lot of articles on that topic, and yeah, it was why can't we have black people in the fantasy world? It's literally a fantasy. And then there was a separate discourse about the slavery aspect of it and the political climate, I guess, that they chose to put in there, which to me didn't really seem necessary to the story.
Right.
It didn't seem necessary to me at all.
Yeah. Because like, imagine if all the slaves were not white. That would be a fucking problematic.
Oh yeah.
Like,
wait, I'm confused. So, I did hear that the one that you were talking. But so the problem, what's the issue with the slave stuff, or like what? Like that's that. Like you didn't need that for the story, or
I felt I didn't.
So people were just upset that slavery was not upset. That's the wrong way to phrase it. Like. What was the issue people were having?
I think
just that it was in the story.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Then there really are no people of color in the main cast.
Got it.
I didn't see any people of color at all.
Yeah, there really aren't. There are some tanner people. Sure. I guess you could call them brown, but like no black people.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from a Japanese dev, it's like, what do you really expect? I'll be honest with you. I hear you, and then they actually commented towards it.
Oh yeah.
Hey, this is the story we're trying to write, and
this was about the slavery thing or the
non diversity.
Got it.
One.
Because I guess sorry, go ahead.
I just don't. I think people were more concerned because it came from Yoshi P. Because in Final Fantasy XIV there are a very wide range of characters. I mean, one of the new characters. Well, I guess they're kind of new. His name is Aaronville. He's a bunny, Viera.
Yeah.
And he's black, and he's going to be one of the main characters in the next expansion. So I think it was surprising for most people that knew Yoshi P's work why there wasn't any kind of diversity in it. So I think that's why it was so. It was just
it was surprising if not anything to people. Gotcha.
But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's literally a fantasy world. Like,
yeah. No, it's interesting. Yeah, it's
just an interesting discourse that this stuff comes up pretty often nowadays. Mm-hmm. But again, like
it is
Japanese people are not necessarily inclusive themselves. The Japanese culture. So is it really surprising that they're not doing that? Like, not really. In my opinion.
Guess the only thing, if you're explaining to me that happens in other games often, that does surprise me that it wasn't included in this game and I mean, I guess then my read on the situation was that he felt that was the choice he wanted to make, but then I agree, it is a fantasy world, so it's not like it's based off of like even a historical thing, because I remember there was a similar issue with a similar like news cycle with the other RPG. It's based off of historical. I tried playing it.
Deliverance.
Kingdom Come Deliverance,
Yep.
and that's
I remember that.
historically based on it's like a historically accurate RPG, and I guess it was set in a time where they didn't have there weren't really any people of color in that European region at the time, and it was a similar issue. But they were saying well, no, that's because we're making this historically accurate, so these people wouldn't be there at this time. But whereas with this fantasy thing. That is interesting. You can do whatever you want, and especially if he's already put people more variety of people in his games to begin with. Yeah. I can see why people would then be like,
decision.
Bring it up.
And we mentioned that there is a gay character, and there was a Kotaku headline famously that was bad gay character later. I'm like. But
sure.
Is him being gay really have anything to do with the story? No, and he's not written like that, and he just happens to be gay.
Sure,
him being gay is not something that is apparent. He has a relationship with one of his underlings.
Sure,
and I think Dion, the supporting cast for this game is incredible. We haven't had this good of a supporting cast since 12. We really have I'll say maybe 3 or 4 main characters,
sure.
but there are a ton of supporting characters. And Dion, I think, is one of the best.
Yeah. I thought he was one.
He has a super good arc.
Gav was my favorite. I was so happy he survived. I was if they kill Gav, I'm gonna be so mad.
And I'm just so what do you? I'm what are we talking about here? I'm this character's great and he's gay, but what that doesn't define
that's not why
the
he's
character.
Great, yeah,
right.
That's. I think that's more of. I would assume
most people
don't. Most people are sitting there enjoying the game, and I get it. You need to write articles and stuff like that, and I'm sure that they were genuinely, but they're not like that. You need to write articles, period. And I don't know. I just think that's probably something most people aren't really reading into. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I can't say that. I'd like to think that. I'd love to actually play it and be able to, see.
You wouldn't know until he actually.
So it's tough for me to speak on it without seeing it.
If you don't remember this conversation, you're probably not going to realize who it is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, and that's probably how it should be, right?
Yeah, I would assume that's the goal, right?
If we're treating diversity and stuff as normal, it shouldn't be this thing that's plastered on his face.
Does this seem like a society also that's against that? Do they present it as
not really?
Because that would make more sense.
His relationship is hidden, but I think it's because of his status.
Sure,
he's the son of the king. He's a dominant.
And is it because it's an extramarital thing, not because
he's not married.
His sexuality. Okay,
no.
But it's
there's not a lot of extramarital stuff in this.
Interesting,
which is a common thing in Game of Thrones.
They have slavery.
Yes,
gay people are cool though. I like it. It's a very interesting society.
It was just when I got to that part, I was oh, cool, they're gay. Yeah. Okay, and now,
that's part of his character, but that's sure.
And spoilers, Dion sacrifices himself, and he sends Terrence his. I guess call him his lover. I don't know if they're really in a relationship. They're in the middle of a war. Yeah. And he sends him. He's you can't be here, man. You gotta go. Yeah. I'm about to do something. I don't want you to be here for it. There's this medicine girl throughout the game who I think is just an analog for people. Cities are constantly getting destroyed in this, either by icon fights, which again, you have giant magical creatures destroying cities, or some other magical reasons, which get more into the Ultima of it, the big bad. And so there's a lot of people being uprooted, moving around, refugees, immigrants, just in Game of, actually probably more so in Game of Thrones, in this than Game of Thrones, countries are dissolving, mid.
Oh yeah,
that makes
giant countries. So people are displaced. No one knows what these cities are going on. The magic is all over the place. This world is fucking chaos.
Interesting.
And then you've got someone coming around smacking their crystals, which is the only thing they had to hold on.
These giant crystals that are the reason a city's there. Oh, it's gone.
Yep.
Right.
So one of the Empire, Sambrake, they move their capital to another city because the mother crystal is really where the magic comes from. It's a giant pillar, crystal mountain,
almost as big as the icons or whatever.
Bigger.
Even bigger.
Okay, they're huge, and in the game, the scale of them is fucking awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're just we're just gonna move the city, conquer it, and it's gonna be our capital, right, guys? Okay.
Cool beans. Let's move out.
Yeah. And And that's where I wanted to bring up you brought it up earlier, Trio, the active time lore. It is so important because I think you can constantly go back and reference things, and it's really just enforcing your experience of learning the world. I'm sure me and you both feel the same about this, unless you have some vastly different opinion. But like it really helps reinforce what the story is.
Absolutely.
Imagine if you had that watching Game of Thrones in season 1 and season 2.
Sure.
Oh God, you would
Trying to
understand
keep
so much
track
better.
of these houses and these people and how they relate
You
to
know
everyone.
who does have something like that? Amazon with their X-ray thing. When you like pause a scene, it'll like bring up who's in the scene and like who
Yes.
they are and stuff like that.
Yeah,
which is pretty
it's
interesting.
similar. Yeah,
for
good,
sure.
good comparison.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Final Fantasy 16 is it throws a lot of information at you very fast.
Absolutely.
So it's like
Especially
you're
at the
kind of
beginning,
like,
they're in the thick
Right.
of it. Yeah.
It's
Who's
almost-
Waloed and
Yeah.
Sambrake
Yeah.
and the Rosarians and the Rostiels?
and
Like,
it's not as bad as Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts is awful. Can you imagine having this for Kingdom Hearts? Oh my God, I might
it's
actually understand
honestly
the story.
Dark Mickey came back and was drowned by Light Mickey.
Right?
I don't know. It's like, what's happening?
You're not too far off. But honestly, like Kingdom Hearts could benefit from something like this. And one of the good things is they're constantly repeating this information towards you. And
Mm-hmm.
later in the game, after the 5-year jump, you have somebody in your hideout, Ninetales. Yeah, Vivian Ninetales.
Yeah.
And she is your
History buff.
current events. Let me
Yeah.
tell you what's going on. And we're going to put this on a map. We're going to show you arrows where you've been, where other people are going, and then it also shows you this, I guess it's like a family tree, how everyone's related, whose side everyone's on. And the codexes update as you go, but you can also look at the older ones too.
Right.
So like as you're learning more about the characters, more is getting revealed, and it's building on them. But I'm like, this game just reinforces that, yes, we do have a complex narrative, but yes, we have a very digestible mechanic to help you understand the story.
Well, and
we're
I
telling.
think it being pointed in a cutscene specifically, I assume helps so much, because I think I would say a lot of like RPGs and stuff have those codexes and like things you can go to
That you
and
can only read.
That you can only read, and you
Yeah.
pull up your side menu and you got to go into and go like Bestiary and Witcher was one thing I did not love because I felt like you had to go like 8 layers deep to get to what you wanted to get to.
Right.
But
I
that's
can agree
awesome
with
how
that.
I can be in mid scene and I just pull up who's in this scene.
Even mid
and what's going
cutscene,
on.
you could literally pull up
That's
the
what
active time lore.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
right?
and like in the
Yeah.
most high dramatic of cutscenes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Let's
well,
just
yeah, you
stop.
Actually,
press
who
the
are you?
button. Yeah, who's that person?
Exactly.
But like,
yeah.
what an accessible feature.
No, it's
I'm
great.
curious who in a meeting was like, I wonder if it was Koji Fox who was
Yeah.
like,
Maybe.
we need to do this because I'm thinking of this game, and this game was made very differently.
Yeah.
I think when they started making Final Fantasy 16, they probably had a pretty deep conversation of like, Final Fantasy is a great series, awesome. We've had a few rough spots. How can we as a development team do something different to
Absolutely.
make the game better?
Yeah.
And it was by writing it in English first. This
I
game
heard that,
made
yeah,
by
it
a
was a big thing.
Japanese studio is written in English first, and with all the flavor text and the way some of the codexes are written, and they're not super long, which is great too.
Mm-hmm.
They're easily digestible. The language is like incredible.
Well,
like,
because
the
it's a
way
lot easier to translate from English back to Japanese,
It's
right?
not easy
because,
to translate the other way
because
correct.
there's literal words that just don't
Yeah.
exist in our
Right.
language
So-
and things like that.
As somebody who has played Final Fantasy 14 for about almost 3 years now, and wants to punch the leader of the localization team, who is not Koji Fox anymore.
Sure.
Used to be Koji Fox. Now it's
What is his full name? That's his-
Christopher.
Christopher. That's his first
Christopher
name.
Koji Fox.
Yeah.
Michael Koji Fox. I don't,
Interesting last
He's got a
name.
very long name.
Yeah.
Now it's
and-
Kate, but I mean, I even saw it in 16 on some of the quests that were side quests, and it was like, oh god, it's like it's happening all over again.
Yeah.
There was me and my friend play 14 constantly, and there was some black mage quest, and it had a name, and he was like, I want to punch the lead localization person for the name of this quest, and I saw that in 16, and I was like, oh no.
What was the
like,
name?
It's the same thing. I can't remember. I can look it up. But it
But
was
it was
like,
just so bad. You're
Yeah,
just like,
it's just
I-
like
I think
pop
it's-
pop culture references.
Right,
all
there
over the
are
place.
there are a lot of like I don't know, there are a lot of witty quest names. Yes, they're like the side quests are very like wittily named. It's like, oh, that's a reference to something I
Yeah.
understand. Like there's tons of them. But like yeah, I think if you're making a game in Japanese and you're translating it back, like I've played enough Japanese games to know like a lot of early Final Fantasy games, including 7, have a lot of translation issues. Either emotions or even Metal Gear has these issues where like scenes are displayed almost incorrectly or they're totally different in Japanese. Like
Yeah.
what they're even saying or the emotion that's coming across is different. And I really liked how the voice cast in this game is they're all English. British people with like English accents, like not American.
Sure.
And it's all swaths of different British people.
Yeah, lots
like,
of. I mean, there's freaking 50 different accents on the island on Britain, right?
And then you have like
in every corner. So
Yeah.
you
the
could really
character Mid. You know, she's like, if I could hear her voice, I can mimic it, but I can't do it right now.
Is it like got a bit of Scottish in it or something?
Yes,
A little bit,
Yes,
yeah.
it does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's- I
And
feel
she's-
it.
There was
she's-
Norwegian too. One of the guy in the Dalmatia, maybe the desert place.
Kuka?
That guy. No, it was you go into this town and the guy is
Lubor.
yes.
Yeah.
Lubor. He was like, I was like, okay, that's a different accent.
Yeah, they're but they're
like
all
a
British.
Norwegian.
I'm like the really interesting like decision to be like, let's just like
Again,
use the British the
Yeah.
British accent as
sure.
like a just like we'll make a lot of people sound really different, but
Yeah.
like,
that feels very Game of Thrones again to me. Not to
yeah,
like
yeah.
you know.
I found the quest name, by the way. So in Final Fantasy XIV, there was a Black Mage quest called Black Squawk Down.
yeah, just like
It was
pretty
like
good.
That's
it was
like
like
early-
that.
that's like early
Black squawk down.
early O's like achievements are like really like corny
Yeah.
like the
Yep.
names. It's like
And I was like, that's the team
It's like,
I know.
It's like, all right, that's a decision. All right, that's funny. But like again, I think if it was translated in Japanese, it might not come. You know, they
No,
might,
I think it definitely
Now
would.
the
I mean,
localization team definitely would have been like,
yeah,
got you.
yeah. Like they're clearly doing a lot of work.
I think that does make a huge difference. Like we're saying, like there's certain words in the Japanese language that you can't really
just don't
even in like
exist.
Right.
Yeah.
my girlfriend speaks Portuguese. I'm like, what's this mean? She's like,
There isn't
a thing. She like has to give me a phrase for the
Yeah.
one sentence.
Isn't
that's-
that like weird?
It's very weird.
It's
It
like
is.
wild.
I ran into
how
it a lot.
How can there not be a thing like even an equivalent in like another language?
Yeah.
Like it's almost like what does the emotion not exist in
yeah,
English?
no, it's true. And even like
Yeah.
trying to like like I don't know, like an insult. She was saying an insult, and I was like, how do you like? What does that mean? She's like, it sounds very silly when I say it in English, and it was like something about a clown or something. But it is just hilarious, like how that
Yeah,
works.
I ran into that in esports all the time. I
Yeah.
had somebody explain to me
Right,
about.
because you're talking to Koreans a lot.
I talked to and one of the translators was like, he talked about taking a picnic, and he's like, in Korean culture, they call breaks during the school day taking picnic. And I was
I mean,
like,
that makes
oh,
sense.
okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it was like,
Easy to
but
understand.
he was like, I'm not translating exactly, but that's like
That's
what
the
he
best,
said.
yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah, I mean, we use
Yeah.
it. You know, if it was school, it'll be like recess.
Yeah. Sure.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't even know. You know, do other languages even have a word for recess? Probably not.
Yeah.
But, and then recess could mean something that like goes in, like
Yeah.
a recess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What?
Words.
Whoa.
Why do we call this a table? What's going on?
I had something I wanted to bring up, and I forget.
I want to bring up the music. I'm
Yeah, please,
dying
please,
to talk
please,
about the
please.
music.
Let's talk on the
When
music.
I was in New York, and for context, when I went to New York, I was in a room, probably right about this size,
Fantastic.
and
wow,
there was
pretty
the
small.
giant. It was pretty small. Yeah, well, it was a press room, so it was a giant TV screen, with the music turned all the way up, and
Let's blast your ears. out.
yeah, and the room was dark, and it was filled with Final Fantasy stuff, and I'm like, I'm freaking in the Final Fantasy, like
you're in it.
in this
Yeah,
room.
yeah.
And she turns it on, and there's a press lady in the room making sure that I don't do anything I'm not supposed to do. I
Sure.
was babysat the entire
course,
time,
yeah.
and I was just like, she turned it on, and the first song played, and I was just like, oh, the music. Like, the first thing I wrote down on my notebook was, like, soaking! And I put an underline under it, and I was like, you genius!
Oh, that's awesome.
But the songs that I really enjoyed the most, and I think why I enjoyed this fight the most, was because of the music was tight, and I know you and I talked a little bit about it. But, so Soken is the composer, the musical director, and he is also the musical director of Final Fantasy XIV.
Gotcha.
As you can see, there's a trend here.
see.
There's a
Like-
trend, yeah. Well, Creative
A lot of
Business Unit
14
3
people.
is the team that made it, and they both work on 14.
They got to come up with cooler names. for the business,
They
you
call
know?
it CB3.
Oh, that's better. I
They
like
call
that
it
better,
CB3. Yeah. And he, oh god, just the music in this game. They take the RPG / action adventure genre of music, and they flip it on its head. Which as I said, I don't really enjoy a whole lot of video games outside of like, I don't know, Final Fantasy 14 and like Stardew Valley. But
We've been talking a lot about Stardew.
but for the Titan fight, it reminded me a lot of the Alexander Raids, which is just like this almost techno
I like
rock.
it.
Yeah,
I always go
it's
for
not just like your
yeah.
big orchestral
Yeah.
choral music.
I was just
there's
like-
there's it's always kind of been
That's
like
But
cool.
that.
just imagine
That's
you
awesome.
go into this sequence, right?
Yeah.
And there's this monster, and you've kind of seen this monster evolve, but it's kind of just like on a wide scale because
Yeah.
the camera zoomed all the way
Sure.
out. But then you get into it as your character, as Clive, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden,
Clive
that thing
Rossfield.
is huge.
Sure.
And you're like, shit.
Oh, fuck,
And then
yeah.
this music starts, and you're like, oh, shit.
Nothing's better than a good music cue.
And dude,
Oh.
every
Yeah.
boss battle, the music is like carrying your like emotion.
Yeah.
Like,
The
like a
violins
fucking
in
horse.
the regular battle
That's so
music.
cool.
Oh, they're
I
so
love
good.
it.
And Final
I'm
Fantasy
just like-
always been a series well known for its music. That's
Sure.
why there's a fucking rhythm game about it.
Yep.
Like, you know, it's not for no reason. The fucking soundtrack needs to come out on Spotify right now.
I know,
So
I
I can
need
like
it.
listen to the full thing.
Yeah. If they have an orchestra of it,
they will, for
I
sure.
went to the Final Fantasy 14 orchestra and I cried, but it is just
Yeah,
something different.
I've been to
man.
two Final Fantasy concerts.
Have you? I wanted to go to the 7 one.
No big
Distant,
deal.
Distant
Worlds.
Yeah.
And there's another one that Distant Worlds is a little bit bigger, where they have like an
of
orchestra,
them, yeah.
like not an orchestra, a choir.
Yeah.
This other
no,
one.
they had a choir at the orchestra too.
Okay, so the other one I went to like last year was just like a small intimate band, like not like a band, but like you know you had like your trombones, your violins, but like it was like one or two people on like each instrument, and it was like. It was cool. It was interesting because I'm like they played like Chaos Shrine from Final Fantasy 1. I'm like,
Right.
oh man, like, this is pretty cool. And like this is like a song from Final Fantasy 1, which is from the 80s, and it's on like a fucking MIDI.
Right.
It's like really cool. Like
That sounds pretty
the
fucking
whole
sweet.
the whole series just has like.
Bangers.
And the original composer is still with us, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how long he's going to be with us. Nobu Uematsu. He's not really. I don't really know how involved he is with any Final Fantasy anymore.
I don't know if he did. I don't know if he worked with Soken for this one.
I would imagine he's probably
I would
involved.
imagine
but
he
like,
was,
not
too.
enough to like. He's not credited on songs. Like the last Final Fantasy he worked on fully, I think was 10. But it's interesting because like again like he's like the guy. So like if he's old.
Yeah.
It's gonna be weird. I would imagine when he passes away, it's gonna be like Final Fantasy music without him officially. Not to bring this down a little bit.
Well, let me bring it down further.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know this, but in 2020 they revealed to us that Soken actually was going through remission for cancer.
Oh wow.
The Japanese are very under the like. Look at Iwata. Nobody knew he was sick for a while.
Yeah.
They're very close.
So he
to the
was
chest.
luckily he was in remission. So
Yeah.
that's what he was saying. But when Yoshipi was talking about it, it was like very emotional and of
course.
And I'm like, and now I think back to it, I'm like, he had to have been working on 16.
Absolutely.
While he had
Oh,
he
yeah,
was-
all
he
those
said,
years ago.
He
Yeah.
said he was in the hospital like with his instruments, like.
I mean,
Working.
that's
Can
wild.
you
Dude,
imagine?
I'm not because the Japanese they're such workers. Like they don't stop.
He also
It's-
loves his
it's
And
job.
also, if you're
unhealthy
sitting
to
there
do.
and you're like, I can do it anyways. I just have to be here. Fuck it. Give me my
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm
Like,
actually
Yeah.
reading Reggie
Yeah.
Fils-Aimé's book, and he has a lot of chapters about him visiting Iwata in the hospital and how he's like working while in the hospital. It's just like
Yeah.
these people are insane.
Yeah.
It's
But that
just
would be
different
me
culture.
though,
For sure.
because I love my job,
No,
and,
there you
and
go,
that's
yeah.
what these people are too. And
Yeah.
you can tell it comes through in the game.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
It
That's
comes
big.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think. Do you have anything before I tangent us?
No, I think not really.
I did want to talk. I guess we haven't really talked in depthly about the story.
that was going to be my last
per
question.
se.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot.
yeah.
but-
What's the broad what's your goal as Clive? What's like the broad like?
It changes.
It really does.
Change,
So
yeah.
so from so what do you start out as again? You're a bot. What is Clive again?
Clive is the son of the House of Rosario.
Okay, but he's one
Or
of these
the
magic
Rossfield.
folks, or no?
He isn't.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
he
Is and he is not.
isn't.
Okay,
So
he wasn't until that first.
So
yeah, sorry, I'll
every
let you go.
no, it's okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm gonna
No,
interrupt
you're
you
good.
here.
No, do it.
So every
up.
nation has a dominant, and a
Right.
dominant is like pretty much like the biggest magic users you can have.
Sure.
And they're treated a little bit differently than bearers. Because they can turn into these giant icons. So Joshua Rosfield, Clive's brother, is the dominant of Phoenix.
Right.
Garuda is the Benedicta Harmon of Waloed is the dominant of Garuda. Hugo Kuka is the dominant of Titan, who's in the Namekian Republic.
You remember so
Dion
much more than me.
Lesage is the son of the Emperor of Sambrake, and he's the dominant of Bahamut. And then we have Barnabas Thom, who's the dominant of Odin, who is the ruler of Waloed. I think that's it. Oh, and Jill Warwick, who is the Theon Greyjoy of this story, who is the we're gonna give you this person of our
asshole.
family to make sure shit goes
Yeah.
well. That's Jill, and she is the dominant of Shiva.
My favorite.
Yeah. She's Clive's love interest, and but that love doesn't bloom until like late game. But
Got
they've known each other since kids. So Clive is also a dominant, and there can only be one dominant of each element at a time. Clive is a dominant of fire, like his brother, and he's Ifrit. That's impossible. So that's like the what's going on here.
Okay.
And like the game starts out like Clive doesn't know he's Ifrit. He like kills Phoenix, but like he doesn't know it, but like I think it's pretty obvious that you as the player know that Clive is Ifrit, considering it's
Sure.
on the fucking box.
Yeah, for God's sake.
It was in all the promotional materials.
Come
like
to me, Ifrit.
Yeah,
Like we
which
all
I was
know.
waiting for that. That came way late in the game.
Yeah,
too.
it's like, I'm like, they're really. I'm like, but that's cool that you as the player know, but the
the
person
character
playing
doesn't.
does not.
It's like you're
Dramatic
waiting for him to
tension.
figure it
Yes,
out too.
sure.
It's like,
That makes sense.
So after the Rosarian Empire is destroyed during this event called at Phoenix Gate, Clive, his mom, kills his dad.
All right.
So she's the Cersei. Kills Elwyn Rosfield. Marries the Emperor of Sambrake. Enslaves her son, Clive. And he becomes like a special forces for Sambrake, and that's where he gets his mark. So he has a bearer mark.
Yeah, that's
and
why
then he takes it off eventually, but he has one for a little while. So Annabella, is it Annabelle or Annabella?
Annabella.
Annabella's a bitch. Like
Yeah.
she, dude,
Fucking bitch.
I've never I would call her the C word. Like,
Oh, yeah, no, I was
she
like-
is despicable.
And I was really upset with how she died too. I was really upset about that. I
It
don't know
wasn't
how
as
you
bad
felt.
as you were hoping it would be.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you wanted to be worse. Yeah,
Right.
like
It
rip her
went
to
on her own
shreds,
terms,
yeah.
and I'm just like,
So she has a son, Olivier, who is like, like the Robin Aaron, like sucking his mom's tit in the middle of the scene, and we're all like, are we okay with
what's
this?
going
seeing
on here?
this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, he's always like, he doesn't talk much, and he dies. Like he's kind of like the puppet of the Ultima, the big bad. But he's weird. He's like, he just sits there, and he's like this little baby, even though he's like looks like he's like 6 or 7. It's weird, but there's no like breastfeeding.
yeah, no, it's not
All right,
that
well, I'm
weird.
not playing.
But you can see it's like, again, like I know we've said Game of Thrones like 17 different times, and so has the marketing.
gonna
but
say,
it's
yeah.
the truth.
Well, but
Like,
that's the-
it's
yeah.
clear where they're getting their inspiration
Absolutely.
from. They
And
might
I
as well
appreciate
brought
that
on
they're
George R. R. Martin.
No, and I appreciate that they are being fully like out front.
Candid.
Yeah,
Well,
like,
there
be like
was-
this is where we were
Yeah, we got
drawing
inspired
inspiration.
by
Yeah.
some of the mature media that's
Yeah.
going on.
There was even a quest, a main quest called A Song of Hope. And
yeah.
I'm like, well, there's
There
your,
you go,
there's your
yeah,
Game of
yeah.
Thrones reference. Yeah.
Interesting.
George R. R. Martin's like, I'm great. Look at me. And that's kind of where the story kicks off. So it's 12 years later after this incident. Clive's older. We don't know what's going on with him. He reunites with Jill, and Sid kind of finds him, and they're like, okay, this is what my cause is. And clearly, like, Clive's been fucked over a lot.
He's
So-
jaded.
Right.
Yeah.
He's kind of
Right.
jaded. So,
Yeah.
like, even though he's a part of, like, was a part of, like, the royal family, he is now treated less than such. So he is empathetic towards the cause of Sid.
Sure.
And that's how the game starts. And then, the plot just kind of escalates from there.
There's a lot going on at one
It
point in the game.
is like Game of Thrones. It is just kind of
It's
hard
just
to
interweaved.
hit
And I'm not
Yeah.
surprised that was that way at all, knowing what I know about, the team. And I was sitting there like,
Yeah,
you know,
I don't have
while-
actually experience with 14, so it's like I don't really know what they're capable
Yeah.
of or
Yeah.
what 14 narrative is even like. So, yeah,
It's good.
I hear it. I hear
good.
it's good.
It doesn't get good until later, but it's very good. But
Just wait till season 3.
the funny thing was, as I was kind of going through the end of Act 2 into Act 3, like when we're really starting to get like the meat of the story, like
Right, we're reaching the climax.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
getting
like
there,
it's like
yeah.
okay, we now Ultima's like they know he exists and we're hunting him and this and that and the other thing. I was like, this is like Shadowbringers. So Shadowbringers, the whole entire storyline was
Second expansion.
third.
Okay, Heaven's Sword is the second.
Heaven's Sword, then Stormblood,
Stormblood. That's what I was.
then
okay.
Shadowbringers, then Endwalker. So the entire plot of Stormblood was this guy wants to reunite all 14 shards of their star, which will basically wipe out humanity. Seeing a theme here?
Yeah.
And then
so that's Ultima's goal.
The Warrior of Light.
Just getting rid of humanity.
Yeah, and then the Warrior of Light obviously doesn't want that to happen because of all of the people they care for. And I'm like, this is Shadowbringers, but in 16. And it's obviously it has a lot of differences, but I was like, this is the same overarching theme of your big bad wants this world that they came from to be the world again, and this,
right.
protagonist obviously doesn't want that.
Ancient race from another planet.
Right,
came to this planet, tried to do something, didn't work. Now they're trying to do it again. Humanity has grown. It's pretty like, I want to say base, but it's like typical like that kind of story, which is fine.
That makes sense. No,
it's interesting because it's not
it's how you use that story. Truly,
right?
Yeah, but the thing is, if I were to compare it like 1-to-1 with Shadowbringers' story was better, and I'll tell you why. When I heard about Ultima's, story or where he came from or what he was trying to do and why he was trying to do it, I didn't sympathize with him at all. I didn't have any sympathy for him, and I didn't like him. I wanted him to die. Mm-hmm. In Shadowbringers, it doesn't help that Emmett Selk was one of my favorite characters, but at that point, I didn't really like him as much as I like him now, but I could empathize with him, and I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense what he's trying to do, and it conflicts with what we're trying to do. I think they did it better in 14.
Got it.
So as far as like how it compares for me, 14 did it better. So you should play it because it's good. But I mean, it was still good, and it did have a lot of differences. Obviously he comes from a different world entirely.
Sure.
Yeah.
And wants to basically recreate that world.
He looks human, but he has got like 4 arms,
he's got 4 arms.
He's alien looking enough. And the way he's like introduced in the story, so like this is where Sid dies, and you're destroying the first mother crystal. So this is like the first catalyst to fuck up the world, which is like the idea of Sid is like we need to destroy the mother crystals because if there's no magic, there's no slavery.
Yeah.
So that's the main idea, but like Ultima wants you to do that, right? It's typical
because then it's an easy picking world once no one has magic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you do that, and like you're at the first one, and this like long-haired like being, which is Typhon, who's a I don't know if he's a summon. No, he's not a summon. He's like an enemy in other Final Fantasy games, but he's like this like weird half-bodied
Typhon.
like amalgamation. Like I don't even know what to call him. And you fight this like it's like, oh shit, this is the kill god thing. It's coming in, and you fight this thing, and it kind of gives birth to Ultima. And he's been sleeping for a while, and now like the time is right.
Yeah.
Ultima must rise.
That's right. Okay, now I.
And that's like the broad strokes of the game. So there's and again, there's
so much.
There's so much political intrigue. Yeah. Like you have a rival with Kupka, the dominant of Titan. He's like your rival.
I see.
You killed my wife.
Yeah,
now
yeah.
You must die.
Benedicta was his lover, and she dies. And like, do we ever figure out who fucking brings her head to him? That was not clear to me. Her head is like you kill her. Clive accidentally kills her.
I assumed that Sid sent it. But that's all I assumed.
So in the beginning of the game, Clive has a big arc about sort of accepting that he did kill Joshua. He didn't. And he is a dominant of fire. And it's a very like mature plot line. He's not like an emo boy like most Final Fantasy.
I'm sad.
Right. Because a lot of Final Fantasy main protagonists are alone and sad.
Yeah.
Cloud is kind of like a stereotypical alone and sad, and Squall from 8 is
I've
like
heard
that.
comparison
like they're just
a
like
lot,
baby bitch boys. And they
classic.
Just, like it really is.
Yeah.
But like I'm like Clive is an adult with like adult problems, and you know what? He like conquers them on his own, and then he has more problems. Mm-hmm. And Jill is like the same thing. She's like like she comes from a land like. Her land is kind of like the wildlings. Like they're people in the north and they're savages and they're involved in this conflict as well. We haven't brought them.
Sure.
What's their nation called?
I don't remember.
Is it Ironblood?
I have no idea.
Jesus Christ.
That was a while ago.
I understand.
I played the beginning of the game on the day it came out, and I skipped through the first 5 hours because I hadn't played it. So this is in May. I'm trying to recall.
She's like, well, I have to go back, and they're religious. They're like the big religious group.
Sure.
And she's like, I have to go back to the mainland and kill what's his name for enslaving me for 14 years.
That's right.
And that's what she does. And once she, Clive helps her do that, but it's her thing, and he's just like, I'm just here. I'm
Yeah.
just the sword. And she
I'm
does
glad.
that. She
Just making
kills
sure she
him.
doesn't die.
You know,
meet you.
and she like, you know, she's like, now we can focus on like the big thing. And
Got
it's
it.
very adult problems,
Yeah.
not like I'm sad, like I'm 17.
I got these powers and I don't know what to do with them.
I don't know what to do.
I'm scared.
What do I do?
But you know what? Speaking of Clive and his character, I really,
Rossfield.
have you seen the voice actor,
Ben
by the
Starr?
way, his
Yeah.
Twitter?
Yeah.
Oh my god! Fuck you! It's me, Mario.
I did. Oh, that was him.
That's
Yeah.
Ben Starr. Yeah, that's Clive.
But
yeah.
the character
It's
Clive
me.
is just so relatable because he has emotion.
Yeah.
And I really love that they did that.
Awesome.
He
Yeah.
cries. He gets angry.
Yeah.
He does get angry.
He gets
Yeah.
angry a lot.
He shows a lot of emotion.
He
Sure.
does. He's broody. Sometimes he needs to be alone. Sometimes he needs to be around people.
Everyone needs to be alone and sad sometimes.
But it's
Yeah.
but he's
Alright,
not
yeah.
like emo sad boy the whole time.
No.
Like he's a very like dynamic character.
That's cool.
Especially
Like-
for somebody who's experienced so much.
Yeah.
Because he's had it rough.
Yeah, yeah.
And then to come
Fuck his
out and
mom.
not
like let's talk
Yeah.
about his mom, dude.
Dude,
Like,
his-
she
oh.
sucks.
when she was talking to them like right before she died and she had this like big
Oh
conversation
yeah, there's
of,
this big moment where they all
like
reunite.
it had to instead it was you or something like oh
so she's mad at
she's-
Clive for not. He was supposed to be the dominant of Phoenix.
Yeah.
She was.
He
Clive was.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's the firstborn.
Yeah.
And his brother is instead. And Clive, his brother has like blonde hair, looks like her. He has black hair, doesn't look like her. And I'm pretty sure he's actually a bastard, right? There's like
Did they imply that? They seem
there's
to imply that.
subtext that he is not.
I don't know that I read into that.
I maybe I was just the Jon Snow vibes were coming on too hard, but
You
I'm
were
like,
like- yeah, you were-
because he doesn't look like his parents that much. He's
You were-
like
He looks
black
like his
hair.
dad a little.
Yeah,
You
but-
were Rob Stark in that scene. He's like, Baratheon, blonde of hair. What the fuck?
Yeah,
Like, he's going down the
exactly.
Who are you?
Yeah.
And the second kid was blonde too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clive doesn't
Huh.
look like his
I
mom
never
at
even
all.
like
Yeah.
picked that.
Which
I-
is like just like a petty thing to like, oh, you don't look
Interesting.
like you don't look
Yeah.
like me.
What
yeah,
the fuck?
I didn't even think about that.
Interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds like a wild ass game. Please, yeah.
No, I don't want to keep going on too much longer.
Yeah.
I think the last thing I want to say, and there's two things. One, so the Clive Jill relationship, again, like very adult. They're not like sapping all over each other. They're pretty adult about it. They've known each other their whole lives, so it's not like they have like a relationship to develop.
I was gonna say
It's already developed.
one
Yeah.
of my most annoying things that I ever see in like a movie, TV show, game is when like two characters, love interests, are in a fight, and just having a conversation would fix it, and they're just like, I'm not even gonna have the talk. Like it's like you're saying, it's a more realistic.
Right.
I don't think
Like
they were
they-
ever actually mad at each
They're
other.
never petty towards each
Well,
other
that's
at
good.
all. I mean, there's just
Yeah.
like so much more bigger things going on,
Yeah.
and they're both like at the center of it.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
And then they have moments where they start confiding in each other, and like you can clearly see like the romantic of it
Yeah.
going on. So when they finally hook up, I don't think they have sex, but they just make out.
They definitely did.
Okay, because they're like sitting naked.
They
on a
were
beach.
naked. Come on.
Yeah,
Okay, so they weren't having to. No.
I don't know. This is a Final Fantasy game. I don't
Yeah.
think sex is. I don't think people have sex in Final Fantasy. So, and this is after. So, going after Barnabas, the dominant of Odin. He's the last one, and he's really powerful. And he gets fucked. Barnabas fucks him up. So there's a lot of like a morale drain. It's like, dude, I don't know if we can do this.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like stranded on this island, and so we know that, and we pan over them, and they're just naked. So and they definitely
Nice.
like developed this a little
Yeah.
bit, but I was like, what if they like? I'm like, I think this could have been more impactful if like they both like they are crawling out of the ocean and they're catching their breath and they're figuring out how each other is, and then they have this moment and then they undress in front of each other. I'm like, I feel like that would have been way more romantic, like the point where they're just like, oh, here they are, they're naked. I'm like, what if
Yeah.
they just like
And then that leaves you thinking, did they fuck?
They
What
not
happened?
they not only reveal themselves physically, but they're emotionally revealing
Sure,
themselves.
sure.
I think I would
I
have.
don't know. I don't know that I agree with that.
Is that too much?
I don't know that I agree with that. There's so to give you a little bit of context, when we first see them,
There's
they're
a
sitting,
lot of nudity.
They're
in this,
sitting
by the way.
back to
A lot
back,
covered.
so they're not like looking at each other. And I was even looking at his eyes. I was like, where are his eyes gonna go when he
What's
looks
going
at her?
on here?
And
Yeah.
he stays looking at her eyes for a really good amount of time, and then
This
finally
is a
they dip
fantasy
down, and I was
game,
like,
no.
oh, I was
Wow.
like, there it is. And then I was like, because the first scene where they were sleeping in the barn.
Yes.
And she like grabbed his hand and he like I was like kiss her. I was like come on. And he
Dude,
didn't. I was
enough of the
like
sexual
so mad.
tension. Yeah, this is like early.
Yeah,
in the
I
game.
shipped them really hard like from the very beginning. And then she finally did it and I was like yes. Like this is like finally.
Yeah,
they did
but
it.
it's and you know like in the last few scenes of the game, like they show each other like a way more care, like overtly than they ever have. Not like too much.
Makes sense.
But you know, at the end, Clive does die.
Oh,
I can't believe you didn't freaking cry. I was fine. Okay, I was fine. I didn't cry at all throughout the entire thing. Joshua died again. I didn't cry.
Sure.
He found Joshua again.
Well, Joshua's
didn't cry.
alive. Yeah. So Joshua like dies twice.
Well, yeah.
but he really doesn't. So like
He
at the
did-
end,
yeah,
like,
because
he-
they put that book out there. I'm like, wait, did he
yeah,
live?
he lives.
I just don't know how.
Yeah. So again, so much to get into, so little time.
Yeah.
Sure.
So little time.
But when I was fine until I saw Torgal looking out the window, and I was like,
Torgal is the dog.
I
We have not brought up the
I
dog.
instantly started sobbing, and I was like,
Jeez.
ugh! And then she realizes it, and then Gav realizes it, and I'm just like,
Yeah, so
Bullshit.
there's this like red star like next to the moon that they talk about early in the game, and the star goes out. And I think Clive says something to her, and it's like something about the star and it going out, and him. It's clearly like him, and it goes out, and she like loses it because that's how she knows he's dead. But we like, okay, so this is where we talk into the sequel DLC of it. I like it. The game clearly said like depicts him being dead, but like.
we
Is
didn't
he?
see him.
Right.
So his hand turns like almost to stone.
Sure.
So all the magic bearers eventually turn into stone because they're using their ability.
Right.
That's a thing.
But
Interesting.
and then at the very end it said, what did it say at the very end? Like, but when another journey ends, ...
another begins.
And then it just went to the
Right.
the
So,
credits.
And yeah.
So I was like, okay, so they're gonna do something, and I think they announced something today, but it had to do with the battle something or other, something.
I have
I don't
no
know,
idea.
but it was not DLC.
right. So the only thing I
PAX West will get news.
really
They said that they were gonna have a 16 panel, so
So-
they're probably gonna announce it there.
and the game doesn't. You know how like typically games of this caliber epilogue and like here's what happened in right after the game, and I usually like those kind of things.
I do too.
This game shows a lot of restraint in being like, you killed the big bad, the world is saved, the game is done.
Yep.
Sure.
There is one scene, and so it is like a family, and like there's just kids playing, things are great, and like they are recounting the story of Final Fantasy 16 like it's like a fairy tale.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm gonna be freed, and like they're playing, and they pan over to this book, and the book like okay, so like this was a big moment for me. Final Fantasy has never been very referential with its name at all, ever. It's just a name. Like it really
Sure.
doesn't have any meaning. I mean, now it does, but like the book. So Joshua survives this ordeal, and he writes the story, and it's called Final Fantasy. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
my
I had about the same reaction. I was like, because that's
cool.
kind of how we find out that he lived.
right.
Right?
You don't see him. Yeah, you never
Because
see him.
I was really confused. I was like, wait a minute. I watched him die not once but twice.
Yeah, what's going on
Like,
here?
It's like he lived.
how is he still alive? So I'm like, okay, there's definitely. I think the DLC is going to be Joshua focused.
So yeah.
It has to be, right?
Before I talk about the DLC, like there is another line like while you're fighting Ultima, and I have the video up because I'm like I just need to repeat this. So like they're fighting and they're in the and Ultima says the world you seek is but a fantasy, and then Clive goes the only fantasy here is yours, and we shall be its final witness. I'm like,
Yeah,
dude,
that
oh
was a
my
good
god,
one.
like they've never ever done anything like that. Where
think
they're
that's
like,
why it works, too.
I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm
probably.
like, this is
That's a part of it
40
anyways.
years in the making. I just felt like as a fan, I'm like, this is like it was such a moment.
It was a payoff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, but again, it's only 2 words that
Yeah,
just
it's
are
nothing great,
included
yeah.
in a sentence. It's nothing
sure.
crazy, but I just found it.
I
Like,
noticed that too.
really
Yeah, It was
interesting.
very symbolic.
Yeah, yeah, and so. Are we getting DLC or are we getting a sequel to this game? Especially
we're
if it's
gonna
game
get
of the
DLC.
year.
We're not going to get a sequel to that.
Here's my issue. Any Final Fantasy main number game with a sequel has never done well.
Sure.
10-2, very widely criticized. 13 has a 13-2, and Lightning Returns is 13-3.
Got it.
Both games not, again, highly
Highly regarded.
critiqued.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't know. Like I don't know.
So you think it would just be a DLC? I mean,
And
would you guys
here's
just
the
rather
thing-
them move on to the next one?
Yes.
Yeah, like I mean,
And so here's my thing with DLC. 15 had a ton of DLC, all not great.
Yeah.
There are some gems in the 15 DLC. And again, like Final Fantasy hasn't been around where like a lot of those games have DLC, but I just don't know. I just really don't know because like Square does not have a good track record with mainline sequels or DLC.
so
I
it
just
sounds to me that you just want the next. Like, start working on the next one.
So-
right? Like, yeah,
Right.
Like, just go to Final Fantasy 17. Like,
Right.
start now. Don't worry about.
Right. So like the obvious DLC would be with Jill because Jill's still alive and we don't play as her. We only play as Clive. It would make
I
sense.
was upset about that, by the way, as a
What?
woman playing a video game that I didn't get to play as the woman.
You do get to play as Joshua for a second.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, but you don't
When he
get to
was
play
young.
as Jill. Yeah.
Yeah, you
And
never
it's
got to play
ridiculous.
as Jill. And you know what? When they first announced that Clive was going to be the protagonist, I was like really upset because I was like, I was really hoping it would be a woman. But
Hey, you had 13.
I know I have
nobody,
to play.
nobody
13.
likes Lightning, all right? But she's the girl in the main.
I'm trying to find where they. I could have sworn I saw something about them talking about PAX West, but they are having like a voice.
Yeah, PAX
actor
West is in a few
panel.
weeks. Yeah, they are.
September, yeah.
That's a few weeks.
That is wild.
You just look.
No, I know you're right, but no, it does feel different. Like it's like a few weeks. Oh, that is September.
Yeah, and
It's
this is
it's like next week.
yeah. I mean, and this is a weird conversation to have with any good game, right?
Yeah.
That comes out that like doesn't usually have DLC, and it's like. Or like a new IP. I'm trying to think.
You know,
of
it's a
what.
prime
And it's like,
example
do we
of
need
this.
a sequel to
You know,
this?
it's a prime example of this, and they made the right decision.
I think I know, but I just can't
It was
think
God
of
of War, the new one. They decided they were gonna. At first, they were gonna do DLC, but then they were like, "What are we doing? Let's just start on the next game." And
Yeah, but that's like
it. Yeah, I heard.
Don't get me
I heard
wrong, I
there
know
were
it's- they're
rumors
definitely-
for a Ragnarok DLC.
well, now that's recent.
and I'm just
even
like,
so.
don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't fucking
Just
do
move
that.
on to the next one.
Just
Genuinely, like
yeah,
I think that's the way
don't.
to do it.
people don't like DLC.
I think on the whole, unfortunately, that is true. Like and
Yeah.
even like only certain games will be able to draw me back in. Like I never played Ghost of Tsushima's DLC just because I was so far removed from it at that point where I'm like,
Yeah.
it's tough for me to get back into it here. I need to get back around to it. Like Cyberpunk, I'll jump back into for that. But like it is rare that I'm pulled hard back into a DLC like after a while, after the game's been out for a while, unless it's like a Fallout or something.
I
But
don't know. I think the best way they could do a DLC is if they released it alongside the PC release.
that would make sense. Yeah,
That would
give
make a
everyone
lot of
little bit
sense because
extra-
then you can buy the PS. Well, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna buy the PC version
Yeah.
because number go up, and then do the DLC right after. That way everything's fresh in my mind. But I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and when it also comes to Xbox, because it's gonna happen. I'm telling you right now.
Of
Well, no,
course,
it
it's
is.
gonna come to
Phil
Xbox.
Spencer is in Square's pocket right now with the with.
Well, of course it will. Well, I mean, a lot of that stuff. It's funny how a lot of the stuff now, exclusivity wise, unless it's like a first party game, it's just timed. Like it's so
right,
funny. Like,
right.
Not this one though.
Yeah, this one,
But
it's,
look-
we don't know like that. They said
Final
this will
Fantasy
never
VII
come
remake is
to
the same
to
way.
Xbox. Yeah.
And then why is Octopath 2 not on Xbox?
yeah.
But it's on PlayStation. But Octopath 1 is only on Xbox.
Makes no sense.
Square
Maybe you should call
clearly
your
is
maybe you should call your friend Phil Spencer and ask him what's going on.
Dude, he's over there making deals. He came out at the fan event, right?
Okay,
and he
but
was
I
like,
want to tell you
"It's
about that
coming
for
to
a second,
Xbox, guys.
because I
We're
was like,
here."
I was expecting a Final Fantasy 14 crossover with 16 because he makes a joke. I don't know if you've seen him make the joke, but every time he's asked, and
Yoshi P?
yeah,
Okay.
every time he's asked about a crossover event between 14 and 16, he goes, "Oh, I don't know. You know, the Final Fantasy 16 director shares my name. His name is Yoki Yoshida, and I'm gonna have to talk to him about a Final Fantasy 16 crossover." He makes that joke every time, but so when they said, "Oh, I'm bringing out a special guest," I thought he was gonna walk back out.
That
I was
would've
like,
been pretty funny.
I was like, this would be hilarious. And
I'll
then
go
I thought
get
he
him.
said Ben Starr because I was like, oh, they got the Final Fantasy 16 voice actor. And then I was like, oh no, he said Phil Spencer because I was in the very front row and it was a little hard to
didn't like
hear.
when Phil came out? That didn't hype you up? You're
I
not
mean,
a Phil
it
guy?
did because then I get more people into my game, and that's
Sure.
more people that consume my articles
Yeah,
and all of that kind of stuff.
And that
but-
has been a big, conversation point of the fact that Final Fantasy 14 it's on PlayStation and PC. Why isn't it on Xbox? I think like it's been like a big thing.
Well, they had been talking about it for years.
Yeah.
Like from the 2020 Fan Fest, which was online only because of COVID, or 2021. They had said like we are trying to work with Xbox and we want it to come to Xbox.
Phil wants to get that shit.
Oh,
on
for
there,
sure
right?
he does. But when they pulled
really
Phil
does.
Spencer out during the keynote, I was like, what the fuck? I was like, oh. So I'm like on my phone, right? Because I manage a team of 5 people. I'm like on my phone and I was like, this is breaking. I said, write a sentence and get it out. Like,
Right. Yeah.
as soon as
Final
I
Fantasy
saw
14
him,
done.
and I
That's
think
so funny.
I had that message in there before they even saw it on the
Yeah,
stream,
that's so
and they were
funny.
like, "What?" And I was like, "Now!"
Now, type it up.
I was like, "Now!" And they were
gosh.
like, and then like 3 minutes later, they're like, "Oh my god!" And I was like,
I told you.
"Yeah, it's huge." So yeah,
amazing.
I definitely see it coming to Xbox at some point.
Yeah.
100%.
But it's on PC. To see, that's the weird thing with Xbox is like
It's connected, right?
it's connected. So like, and I don't know how big of a reach the Series X even has hardware at this point. So really, I think it is more for Microsoft to just at least get something on the PC. In general, I think would help them a lot. But is it on the PC as Final Fantasy 16, or is it only?
No, it
PlayStation?
is not.
Okay,
But it probably will because the trend.
sure.
Well, the
No,
thing
that makes
is
sense.
too, like
That's
I
what
wouldn't-
we're going off.
Sure, I see.
I wouldn't have been able to play 16 on my PC.
Sure, no, I can
Yeah,
imagine.
it's a
And
beautiful fucking game.
It's a gorgeous game.
Yeah.
It's huge
Yeah,
too.
if you can't play it on its full
No,
potential,
absolutely.
like,
It would only be the people who have that
Right,
rig.
it's to your detriment,
For
yeah.
sure.
It's like 3070 or higher.
Jesus.
100%.
I got a new computer the other day. Gooch helped me pick it out. It's like a nice little Dell gaming laptop. That's what I've been playing Baldur's Gate on. It's been interesting. It's the only it's the
My
first game I
laptop.
played on a laptop in a while. Or
My
like on
laptop has a
computer.
3070 in it, and my PC has a 1070 in it.
I don't
have a
even know what
1070.
So I'm
there
like,
is
I
a
need a new
graphics card in
computer.
mine. I don't know what it is.
I think it's a 370.
I think it is.
Or
It's an
3070.
NVIDIA. I
Yeah,
think.
it's a 3070.
I
Yeah.
updated my drivers. I felt like a real PC gamer. I didn't know.
Don't go doing that all the time.
Oh, really?
Sometimes your drivers can fuck your computer.
Yeah,
Okay,
they
all right.
can.
That's
Do
good.
it like,
said,
do
well,
it
Baldur's
like twice a year. Yeah, the
Baldur's Gate
one.
recommended that I did it when I logged on,
Okay.
so that's why
don't
I did it.
Don't like take the auto update off.
All right.
But anyway, yeah, I'm just scared for 16 DLC because I watched what happened with 15 and its DLC get canceled.
Yeah.
Like, and it not like they did the multiplayer DLC. They did all these episodes for characters. I don't think many people really gave a shit about. No offense. So I'm just scared. I don't want to see them
I
ruin.
understand.
but like on the
ruin
other
such a good
half
game.
of it, Final Fantasy VII Remakes DLC did well.
Oh yeah, I forgot. See, you know why I just like Trio said, or maybe it was what you said. It's like, oh, they're gonna release it with the PC version. They released it with the PS5 version, so it
That
almost
makes
didn't
sense.
feel like DLC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for reminding me of that. But like, was Intergrade real? Like, Intergrade was fine. Like, I don't think it like did. It wasn't like, oh yeah, this is like
I
amazing.
mean-
I'm just like, oh, I like Dirge of Cerberus, so I know all these characters.
Sure.
Unfortunately for me, my save got lost at the 13th chapter, and I got so upset that I haven't picked it back up yet.
Well, you're missing
The
out.
last time something
I
like that
know.
happened to me was, I think, Cyberpunk when it first released. I got
12
like
hours,
12
right?
or 13 hours in.
This was like
And
30
it, like,
hours I had into the game, and my save went poop. I don't know where it went. I don't know if my husband screwed it up. I think
Dude,
it
I
was.
remember that. You're like, dude, I
Did
just
I like
lost 12
well,
hours of
I think it might have been.
progress.
I think it actually might have been even more than that. I cleared so much of the side quests, and then I went to do the main quest, and like it glitched and didn't pop for me.
Oh no.
So like it just was my main quest
What?
was empty, and I just couldn't do anything. It was a sad.
But
day.
I will
30
say,
hours sometimes.
but I will say this too. I am going to replay this game soon-ish.
Yeah, there's good
'cause
reason.
Obviously, I'm going to platinum it, but like the replayability, like we're talking, like
really
redigesting
there.
the story.
It's different.
after experiencing it, and then the gameplay stuff. I get to experiment further with the
Well,
stuff.
I'll say this. So I haven't jumped into New Game Plus yet at all.
Yeah.
I know you're going to play on Final Fantasy mode, but New
Yeah.
Game Plus is different. It is not the same game.
Sure.
Wait,
It is-
really?
yes, it's different.
Like story wise, or just like
Not
gameplay?
story wise,
Yeah.
but there are certain things in dungeons or boss fights that will be different.
Oh, cool.
So the reason I know this is because I was playing through, so I got to preview it, right? And in the preview, they took me through the dungeon where you face Garuda for the first time.
Yeah.
And
First few hours of the game.
it was like right after I played through like the first 5 hours, and this was like maybe an hour after that. Because it was separate. It was not like in my gameplay. So they were like, we're going to take you through this dungeon. I'm like, okay, cool. And it was a new game plus because when I went through the dungeon for the first time in the actual game, I was like, why don't I have all these powers I had when I played the demo? And it's because they were putting me on New Game Plus. And the reason that I know this is because I was waiting the entire time to capture this one moment in the Garuda fight where she says "now fall," because in Final Fantasy XIV, when you go against her, there's a song and it says "now fall," and it didn't happen in the version I played through.
Really?
So I was like, wait, hold
So
on.
like it's not actual different mechanics. It's like
It's
even
no,
more
they
than that.
they were different mechanics.
Right, but it's different mechanics. But like it's even like I'm thinking.
There's more
I'm thinking she
additions
says
to
"now
it.
fall" in like a cinematic way. Is guess what I'm saying?
Yeah, so in Final Fantasy XIV, it's just the music. In Final Fantasy XVI, obviously the music is different, everything is different, but she, like, gathers Clive up in this, like, bunches of, like, stone from the building she's destroying, and she, like, pulls him up, and then she says, "now fall," and she slams him into the ground. That is not in the version I played at home. That was in the New Game Plus version that I played in the demo. So I was like, that's a Final Fantasy XIV reference. So if there are more references like that, I'm definitely going through New Game Plus because I want to find all the Easter
It's a
eggs.
good reason to. Yeah.
And
there were a lot of voices too. Oh, there's so many voices.
a better reason, I probably don't need to play the side quests. So I
there
can
you
just
go.
kind of
Yeah, you just mainline through it.
Yeah. Because the side quests are definitely not a real like an appeal at all. It's which is sad.
Yeah, that does suck.
Like, cause like you play a game like Witcher, and it's like, dude, you play every side quest.
See, that's the thing. I will play every side quest in case there's a reference.
Yeah.
Because I got to.
Sometimes I'll be like, I guess I'll just do it.
Sure.
In the prologue, you had to have gotten to the first Dragoon.
Yes. Yeah.
So-
I
Yeah,
believe
the
so.
guy on the building who looks like Kane from Final Fantasy
Yes.
IV.
So I got to that point when I was at the press thing in New York, and I had to stifle my scream because that voice actor is the same voice actor as the Azure Dragoon in Final Fantasy XIV, and I lost my ever-loving shit because he's one of my favorite characters. So I was like, oh man, is this what I have in store? Is there going to be Final Fantasy XIV references? And then I went through the whole thing, and I was like, there are voices.
See,
Yeah,
I would say that's the voice actor, but it's a Final Fantasy IV reference because that's how Kane is on the box cover.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he's like the first main Dragoon character, and he stands with his leg up with his spear exactly like that. I'm like, dude, you guys are fucking ridiculous.
Let me show you some Heavensward promotional material because that is exactly what it looks like in Heavensward too, where he's like sitting on top of a building and he's got his leg tucked back.
Yeah, it's probably what it's a reference to. But get that up. Let's definitely end the podcast. I feel like we've reached our limit.
I just have to use the bathroom really bad, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Jess, where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter, just Scharnagle, which is a bitch to spell, so it's probably
It'll
gonna
be
link
in the
somewhere.
It'll be linked down below.
Yeah.
And then anything that comes on Fanbyte. If you see something Fanbyte, click on it, please, so
Please
I
go
can keep my
support
job.
Jess. Yeah, that would be great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a blast.
I appreciate it. I had a
Yeah,
lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
So, thank you all. If you've been watching with us live on twitch.tv/Delco Nerd Network, we really appreciate your time. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are found. Just search Delco Nerd Network. We're on all your favorite social media pages as well, at Delco Nerds on basically everything. We got a Facebook page. We got a Discord channel. All that good stuff will be linked down below with all of Jess's information. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It really helps out the podcast. You can also email us comments, questions, or concerns to delconerds@gmail.com. We'd be happy to get back to you, and you can even find all this information on our website, delconerdnetwork.com. For Gooch, for Jess, I've been Trio. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay nerdy, and we will see you next time.